Dear students, today I will discuss about modern sewage treatment plant. Let me begin. Sewage. What is sewage? Sewage is wastewater from community containing solid and liquid excreta derived from houses, street, yard washings, factories and industries. It resembles dirty water with unpleasant smell. The term sludge is applied to the wastewater which doesn't contain human excreta. Sewage systems are built in order to collect and transport wastewater from residential and commercial areas, which typically has a relatively high concentration of biodegradable organic and inorganic compounds that can be easily utilized by microorganisms for cells growth and life maintenance. The sewage generation depends on few factors like habits of the people. If people are using more sewage, there will be more sewage. Second factor is time of the day. Sewage does not flow uniformly throughout the day. It is subjected to variations depending upon the time of the day, and also sometimes some different seasons. In the morning, when the people tend to use more water, there will be great flow of sewage, and in mid the flow is less, and again there is a slight increase in the evening. Next slide. The composition of the sewage. The composition of the sewage, 99.9% of the sewage contains water. The solid, which comprises barely of 0.1%, are partly organic and partly inorganic. They are partly in suspension and partly in solution. The offensive nature of the sewage is mainly due to organic matter which it contains. The organic matter decomposes according to the laws of the nature, during which the process is that gives offensive smell, offensive odor, that is stinky smell. In addition to sewage is charged with numerous living organisms derived from feces, some of which may be agents of disease, pathogenic agents. It is estimated that 1 gram of feces may contain about 1,000 million of E. coli, 10 to 100 million of fecal streptococcus, and 1 to 10 million spores of Clostridium perfringens, besides several others. The aim of the sewage. Aim of the sewage purification is the raw sewage or inadequate treated sewage should not be discharged into river, sea or other sources of water supply, because the oxygen in the water supply is used by numerous aerobic bacteria found in sewage. The aim of the sewage is to stabilize the organic matter so that it can be disposed of safely, and to convert the sewage water into efficient of acceptable standard of purity which can be disposed of to land, river or sea. Fourth slide. Biological oxygen demand. Biological oxygen demand is defined as the amount of oxygen absorbed by a sample of sewage during specified period, generally 5 days, at a specified temperature, generally 20 degrees Celsius, for aerobic destruction or use of organic matter by living organisms. BOD value ranges from 1 mg per liter for natural waters to about 300 mg per liter for untreated domestic water. Chemical oxygen demand. Chemical oxygen demand measures the oxygen equivalent to that of portion of the organic matter in a sample which is susceptible to oxidation by a strong chemical oxidizer. If wastewater contains toxic substances, these tests may be only practical method for determining organic load. Next, it is suspended solids. The suspended solids are yet another indicator of strength of sewage. The amount of suspended solids in the domestic sewage may vary from 100 to 500 ppm. If the amount of suspended solids is 100 mg per liter, the sewage is said to be weak. If the amount is 500 mg per liter, sewage is said to be strong. Now, The decomposition of the organic matter, how it is decomposed. There are two processes. One is aerobic process, which is most efficient method of reducing the organic matter in sewage. The process requires a continuous supply of free dissolved oxygen. The organic matter is broken down into simpler compounds, namely carbon dioxide, water, ammonia, nitrates, and sulfates by the action of bacterial organisms including fungi and protozoa. Another method of decomposition is anaerobic method, where the sewage is highly concentrated and contains plenty of solids. The anaerobic process is highly effective. End products of this anaerobic method of decomposition are methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide and hydrogen. In anaerobic decomposition, the reactions are slower and the mechanism of decomposition is extremely complex. In the next slide, I have given a picture of this modern sewage treatment, how exactly the primary treatment, secondary treatment occurs, and how in the last stage it is the load is reduced. Okay, move on to next slide, that is the sixth slide. Here the modern sewage treatment begins. Modern sewage treatment plants are based on biological principles of sewage purification, where the purification is brought about by the action of aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. The treatment of sewage may be divided into two stages, that is a primary and secondary treatment. In primary treatment, the solids are separated from the sewage partly by screening and partly by sedimentation and subjected to anaerobic digestion, which is the first stage in purification. In secondary treatment, the effluent is subjected to aerobic oxidation, which is second stage of purification. Okay, move on to next slide. Primary treatment. Screening. Sewage arriving at disposal work is first passed through a metal screen which intercepts the large floating objects such as pieces of wood, rags, masses of garbage, dead animals. The removal is necessary to prevent clogging of the treatment plant. The screen consists of vertical or inclined steel bars, usually 5 cm apart, that is 2 inches apart. In some plants, the screens are of a fixed type, wherein others the screens are of moving type. Screenings are removed from time to time, either manually or by mechanically, and disposed of by trenching or burial. Next slide. Grit chamber. Sewage is then passed through a long slide chamber called grit chamber or detritus chamber. This chamber is approximately 10 to 20 meters in length. It is so designed as to maintain a constant velocity of 1 feet per second with a detention period of 30 seconds to 1 minute. The function of this grit chamber is to allow settlement of heavier solids such as sand and gravel while permitting the organic matter to pass through. The grit which collects at the bottom of the chamber is removed periodically or continuously and disposed of by plain dumping or trenching. Next slide. One picture is being given here. Okay, next, primary sedimentation. Sewage is now admitted into a huge tank called as primary sedimentation tank. It is a very large tank holding from 1/4 to 1/3 of the dry weather flow. There are various designs in primary sedimentation tank. By far the commonest is a rectangular tank. Sewage is made to flow very slowly across the tank at a velocity of 1 to 2 feet per minute. The sewage spends about 6 to 8 hours in the tank. During the long period of relatively small conditions in the tank, a very considerable amount of purification takes place, mainly through sedimentation of the suspended matter. Nearly 50 to 70% of the solids settle down under influence of gravity, and a reduction of 30 to 40% in the number of coliforms is obtained. Next slide. The organic matter which settled down is called sludge, and it is removed mechanically operated devices without disturbing the operation in the tank. While in this going through a small amount of biological action also takes place, in which the microorganisms present in sewage attack complex organic solids and break them down into simpler soluble substances and ammonia. A certain amount of fat and grate rise to the surface to form scum, which is removed from time to time and disposed of. When the sewage contains organic trade wastes, it is treated with chemicals such as lime, aluminum sulfate, and ferrous sulfate. Addition of one of these chemicals precipitates the animal protein material quickly. Move on to next slide. Now the secondary treatment. Effluent from the primary sedimentation tank still contains a proportion of organic material in solution or in colloidal form and numerous living organisms. It has a high demand for oxygen and can cause pollution of soil and water, so it is subjected to further treatment, that is aerobic oxidation, maybe one of the following methods, that is trickling, filter method, or activated sludge processes. Next slide. Trickling filters method. The trickling filters or percolating filter is a bed of crushed stones or sinker 1 to 2 centimeter, that is 4 to 8 feet deep, 2 to 30 meter, that is 6 to 100 feet in diameter, depending upon the size of the population. I will repeat, the trickling filter or percolating filter is a bed of crushed stones with dimensions of 1 to 2 meter deep and 2 to 30 meter in diameter, depending upon the size of the population. The effluent from the primary sedimentation tank is sprinkled uniformly on the surface of the bed by revolving devices as shown in the picture. The device consists of hollow pipes, each of which have a row of holes. The pipes keep rotating, sprinkling the effluent in a thin film on the surface of the filter. Over the surface and down through the filter, a very complex biological growth consists of algae, fungi, and protozoa and bacteria of many kinds occurs. This is known as zooglial layer. Move on to next slide. As the effluent percolates through the filter bed, it gets oxidized by bacterial flora in the zooglial layer. The action of this filter is thus purely a biological one and not one of the filtration as the name suggests. The term filter is a misnomer. The trickling filters are very efficient in purifying sewage. They do not need rest pauses or because this wind blows freely through the beds, supplying oxygen needed by the zooglial flora. The biological growth or zooglial layer lives, grows, and dies. The dead matter sloughs off, breaks away, and it is washed down the filter. It is light green flocculent material and it is called as humus. The oxidized sewage is now led into the secondary sedimentation tank or humus tank. Now the secondary sedimentation tank, that is activated sludge process. Activated sludge process is the modern method of purifying sewage in place of trickling filter. The heart of the activated sludge process is aeration tank. The effluent from the primary sedimentation tank is mixed with the sludge drawn from the final setting tank, also known as activated sludge or return sludge. This sludge is a rich culture of aerobic bacteria. The proportion of activated sludge to the incoming effluent is of the order of 20 to 30%. Move on to next slide. The mixture is subjected to aeration in the aeration chamber for about 6 to 8 hours. The aeration is accompanied either by mechanical agitation or by forcing compressed air continuously from the bottom of the aeration tank. This latter method, that is pushing the air from the bottom, is also called as diffuse aeration, is considered to be a best method of aeration. During the process of aeration, the organic matter of the sewage gets oxidized into carbon dioxide, nitrates, and water with the help of aerobic bacteria in the activated sludge. The typhoid and cholera bacteria in the activated sludge are definitely destroyed. The coliform greatly reduced. Activated sludge plants occupy less space, required skilled operations. 1 acre of activated plant does a work of 10 acres of percolated filters, that is the trickling filters. Activated sludge process is therefore best suited for larger cities and the percolating filters for smaller towns because they are cheaper to install and easier to operate. Next slide. Secondary sedimentation. Secondary sedimentation, the oxidized sewage from the trickling filter or aeration chamber is now led into the secondary sedimentation tank where it is detained for 2 to 3 hours. The sludge that collects in the secondary sedimentation tank is called as aerated sludge or activated sludge because it is fully aerated. It differs from the sludge in the primary sedimentation tank in that it is practically inoffensive and it is rich in bacteria, nitrogen, and phosphates. It is a valuable manure if dehydrated. Part of the activated sludge is pumped back into the aeration tank in an activated sludge process and rest pumped into the sludge digestion tank for treatment and disposal. A picture of activated sludge process is given here. Please go through. Next, sludge digestion. One of the greatest problems associated with the sewage treatment is the treatment and disposal of the resulting sludge. 1 million gallons of sewage produces 10 to 20 tons of sludge. The sludge is a thick black mass containing 95% of water. It has revolting odor. It has a very offensive odor, that is stinky. It is very stinky. There are a number of methods of sludge disposal. First one is digestion. Modern sewage plant treatment employs the digestion of the sludge as a method of treatment. If sludge is incubated under favorable conditions of temperature and pH, it undergoes anaerobic autodigestion in which complex solids are broken down into water, carbon dioxide, methane, and ammonia. Volume of sludge is also considerably reduced. It takes 3 to 4 weeks or longer for complete sludge digestion. The residue is inoffensive, sticky, and tarry mud which will dry readily and form an excellent manure. Sludge digestion is carried out in special tank known as sludge digestion tank. Methane gas, which is a byproduct of this sludge digestion, can be used for heating and lighting purpose. Second one is the sea disposal. Sea coast towns and cities can dispose sludge by pumping into sea. The third one is land, that is the sludge can be disposed of by composting with town refuse. Move on to next slide. Disposal of effluent. The disposal by dilution. Disposal into water courses such as river and stream are called by disposal by dilution. The effluent is diluted in the body of water and impurities are oxidized by dissolved oxygen in the water. The diluting capacity of the river and the receiving body of the water and its dissolving oxygen contents are important considerations before discharging into the this effluent into river or any other water bodies. The second one is disposal on land. If suitable land is available, the effluent can be used for irrigation purposes. For example, Okla sewage treatment plant in Delhi uses this method. Move on to next slide. The other methods of sewage disposal are given here, like sea outfall, river outfall, land treatment, oxidation ponds, and oxidation ditches. Next slide. Sea outfall. Sea outfall. These sea coast towns and cities may dispose of their sewage by discharging into the sea. For instance, nearly 2/3 of the untreated sewage or the Greater Mumbai is discharging every day into Arabian Sea. Purification takes place by dilution in the large body of seawater and the solid gets slowly oxidized. The drawback of this method is that the offensive solid matter may be washed back to the shore and create a public nuisance. In order to prevent this, sewage outfall may be designed to discharge the sewage into deep water at many points. The second one is river outfall. Raw sewage should not be discharged into the rivers. The present day practice is to purify the sewage before it is discharged into the rivers. How far the sewage should be purified depends upon the dilution and the river provides to carry on the aeration and self purification. Next slide. Land treatment. Land treatment, it is also known as sewage farming. If sufficient and suitable land, that is which is having porous soil, if it is available, sewage may be applied to the land after grit removal, screening and a short period of settlement. This type of treatment is practiced in some Indian towns and cities, and it is known as sewage farming or broad irrigation. An acre of land would be required to treat a sewage of 100 to 300 persons. The land is first laid into ridges and furrows. Sewage is fed into these furrows intermittently and crops are grown on the ridges. Oxidation ponds. A cheap method of sewage treatment is oxidation ponds, which has been referred to by many different names like waste stabilized ponds, redox ponds, or sewage lagoons, etc. The term waste stabilized pond is more appropriate. The term waste includes the sewage and industrial wastes. Although an old method of purifying sewage, oxidation pond has attracted the attention of public health engineers only recently. Over 50 ponds are working at present in India. The first large lead installation was one in Bidar, where it serves a population of 1 lakh. Oxidation pond is an open shallow pool 1 to 1.5 meter deep with an inlet and outlet. To qualify as oxidation pond, there must be presence of algae, certain type of bacteria which feed on decaying organic matter, and third one is sunlight. The organic matter contained in sewage is oxidized by bacteria to simple chemical compounds such as carbon dioxide, ammonia and water. Next slide. The oxidation ponds are predominantly aerobic during sunshine hours as well as some of the hours at night. In the remaining hours of the night, the bottom of the these layers are generally anaerobic. Thus, the sewage purification in oxidation pond is brought about by a combination of aerobic and anaerobic type of bacteria. The effluent may be used for growing vegetables, crops, land irrigation, and may be discharged into rivers or other water courses after appropriate treatment. Next slide. Oxidation ditches. The other methods recommended are oxidation ditches or aerated lagoons. These methods make use of mechanical rotors for extended aeration, for treatment of waste of population between 5,000 to 20,000. An oxidation ditch is required in an area as compared to 22 acres of oxidation ponds and 2.5 acres for an aerated lagoon. These are low cost treatment methods for the purification of sewage. And in the next slide, I have given the pictures of oxidation ditches and oxidation ponds, and in next slide also here the oxidation ditches pictures are there. And now the modern sewage treatment class is over. Thank you.